Farmers there are raising rabbits, millions of rabbits. And these rabbits bring in huge amounts of money.
Yes, you heard that right. China has relocated 1 million rabbits to a desert. But why? Well, they want to change the landscape. In a world grappling with relentless environmental crises, few challenges are as urgent as desertification. The Dalad Banner Desert Reclamation Project has not only transformed once desolate landscapes, but also sparked a global movement toward ecological restoration. It goes to show what human ingenuity and determination can achieve, inspiring similar efforts across the world in the fight to reclaim lost ecosystems. Today, we're diving deep into the story of how Dalad Banner became a game changer. Let's get started. Dalad Banner's environmental revolution. Desertification, the process by which fertile land turns into barren desert, is one of the most pressing environmental crises the world faces today. According to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, or UNCCD, roughly 12 million hectares of land are lost every year to desertification, affecting millions of people and threatening food security, biodiversity, and water resources. This global environmental challenge has prompted many nations to pursue desert reclamation efforts, though traditional methods like tree planting often prove to be insufficient and unsustainable. In the search for more integrated and lasting solutions, one project stands out as a game changer: the Dalad Banner Desert Reclamation Initiative. This innovative endeavor not only transformed vast swathes of the Gobi Desert into green, fertile land, but also laid the foundation for a new, holistic approach to ecological restoration. This project is more than just a small plantation effort. It's big, huge in fact. We're talking about reforestation, green energy, and landscape transformation. Desertification is rapidly advancing, particularly in regions like Africa, Asia, and parts of North America. The problem is multifaceted. Human activities such as deforestation, overgrazing, and improper agricultural practices exacerbate natural processes like droughts, making it increasingly difficult to restore the land to its original state. In China alone, desertification affects over 400 million people, with about 1/4 of the country's land area classified as desert or desertified land. The Gobi Desert, one of the largest deserts in the world, has been steadily expanding, encroaching on agricultural areas and urban settlements. Traditional desert reclamation approaches, such as planting trees to halt the spread of sand dunes, have been the cornerstone of many environmental efforts. While tree planting is undoubtedly beneficial in some contexts, it is often not enough to address the complex causes of desertification. These methods often fail to account for the interconnectedness of ecosystems, where water retention, soil fertility, and local biodiversity are all crucial for long-term success. In many cases, the trees fail to thrive due to poor soil conditions, lack of water, or unsuitable climate. Over time, the land returns to a desert state. What the world needs is a more holistic, sustainable approach, one that can restore vegetation and improve the overall ecosystem. This brings us to China's groundbreaking project in the Dalad Banner region, located in the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region of northern China. This area, part of the larger Gobi Desert, was one of the most degraded and arid regions in China. Local farmers struggled with infertile soil, unreliable rainfall, and declining agricultural yields, which led to widespread poverty and migration. The land was slowly but surely turning into desert, and the situation was growing dire. In response, the Chinese integrated cutting-edge technologies with ancient ecological knowledge, utilizing satellite data, drones, and remote sensing to monitor land conditions. They introduced a multi-pronged strategy that included soil restoration, water conservation, and the introduction of native plant species. Rather than simply planting trees, the idea was to regenerate the soil's natural fertility and stabilize the groundwater system. One of the key innovations in this area was the use of biomulching. This process involves spreading organic matter over the land to protect the soil from wind erosion retain moisture, and create a fertile environment for plants. The Chinese also employed a method called windbreak planting, using rows of plants to reduce the impact of wind and sand, thereby preventing further erosion and desertification. By 2010, the project had begun to show remarkable results. Over 15,000 hectares of land had been successfully restored, with native plants beginning to flourish where once there had been only sand and dust. The success of the Dalad Banner project attracted attention from both government agencies and environmental organizations. In 2014, the project expanded further, and this initial work became an international case study for sustainable desert reclamation. The Dalad Banner initiative has had a profound impact on global desert reclamation efforts. Countries in Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia, facing similar issues with desertification, began to take notice. This integrated approach provided a scalable solution, and many nations reached out for collaboration, sharing knowledge and resources. One of the most notable international projects influenced by Dalad Banner's success is the African Union's Great Green Wall initiative, launched in 2007. This ambitious project aims to combat desertification and land degradation by creating a mosaic of green spaces across the Sahel region of Africa. Drawing inspiration from the Dalad Banner project, the Great Green Wall aims to restore 100 million hectares of land by 2030. As desertification continues to threaten ecosystems and communities around the world, the Dalad Banner project offers a glimmer of hope, demonstrating that with the right combination of science, technology, and ecological understanding, we can restore our planet's deserts to their former vitality. But why did the Chinese have to take such a rash action? And what's the deal with releasing rabbits in the desert? Well, let's start from the very beginning. The desertification crisis in China. By the 1980s, northern China was grappling with an environmental crisis of unprecedented scale in the form of desertification. What was once fertile, arable land had become an expansive, barren desert, with sand dunes advancing at an alarming rate. Stretching across regions such as Inner Mongolia, Ningxia, and Gansu, the encroaching desert had already swallowed vast areas of farmland, threatening the livelihoods of millions and jeopardizing food security for the entire nation. According to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, or UNCCD, desertification affected around 1/4 of China's landmass during this period. The most severely impacted areas were located in the northern and western regions of the country, particularly in the Gobi Desert, one of the largest deserts in the world, and in the Les Plateau. These regions, already semi-arid to arid, were slowly turning into vast swathes of sand and dust. A combination of human activity and natural factors caused this drastic change. Deforestation, overgrazing by livestock, and unsustainable farming practices were the primary contributors to soil erosion. The delicate topsoil, stripped of vegetation, became highly susceptible to wind erosion, resulting in the spread of sand dunes. Meanwhile, the harsh climatic conditions in northern China, including long periods of drought and low annual rainfall, further aggravated the situation. In addition, as the desert spread, rivers and lakes began to dry up, compounding the problem and making it harder for people to maintain agricultural practices. The environmental impact was striking. Barren land replaced once fertile agricultural fields, while the advancing dunes buried farmland, villages, and infrastructure. Not only was the land itself becoming unproductive, but local biodiversity was rapidly declining. Native vegetation struggled to survive, and the loss of forests and plant life had cascading effects on local ecosystems, leading to further soil degradation. Water sources became scarce, exacerbating the challenges for local farmers who depended on irrigation for their crops. The ecological consequences were not confined to the local area. By the mid-1980s, the rapid spread of desertification had reached beyond the affected regions, contributing to worsening dust storms and environmental pollution. Cities like Beijing, located far from the deserts, were plagued by seasonal dust storms that originated from the expanding Gobi Desert. In 1983, a particularly severe dust storm resulted in thick clouds of sand and dust reaching as far as Japan and Korea. Faced with such an extensive crisis, the Chinese government began implementing various traditional reforestation efforts in a bid to combat desertification. These included large-scale tree planting campaigns aimed at greening the affected areas, halting the spread of sand dunes, and revitalizing the soil. The idea behind these initiatives was that trees, particularly drought-resistant species, would anchor the soil, reduce wind erosion, and increase moisture retention, ultimately transforming the barren land into more productive ecosystems. However, the limitations of these traditional methods quickly became apparent. Despite the scale of tree planting campaigns, many of the efforts failed to achieve their intended results. One of the key challenges was the harshness of the arid climate. The Gobi Desert, for example, receives an average annual rainfall of only about 194 millimeters, making it one of the driest regions in China. Even drought-resistant tree species struggled to establish themselves in such water-scarce conditions. Moreover, the soil conditions in desertified areas were poor and lacked the nutrients required for sustained plant growth. The land had become so degraded that it was incapable of supporting the growth of even hardy plant species. Furthermore, the lack of an integrated approach to soil restoration and vegetation management meant that tree planting alone could not address the underlying causes of desertification, such as overgrazing and unsustainable agricultural practices. In addition to the environmental challenges, the scale and logistics of large-scale reforestation efforts proved to be unsustainable. The Chinese government's ambitious projects often relied on massive state-funded tree planting campaigns, which, while well-intentioned, were not always executed with the necessary expertise. In some cases, the choice of tree species was not suitable for the specific environmental conditions. For example, the introduction of non-native species disrupted the balance of the ecosystem, making the land even more vulnerable to desertification in the long run. One of the most ambitious projects, the Green Great Wall, launched in the early 1980s, aimed to plant millions of trees along the northern borders of China, stretching from the eastern coast to the western desert regions. While the project was seen as an attempt to create a protective barrier against the encroaching desert, its effectiveness remained limited. High rates of tree mortality, coupled with a lack of attention to broader ecological factors like soil fertility, water management, and community involvement, led to only partial success. In response to the growing recognition of the limitations of traditional methods, Chinese environmental scientists and policymakers began to explore new ways to combat desertification. A more integrated approach that included soil regeneration, sustainable water use, and the restoration of natural vegetation became the focus of research and development in the 1990s and beyond. Projects like the Dalad Banner desert reclamation effort, which began in the early 2000s, built on lessons learned from previous tree planting campaigns and focused on a multifaceted approach to desert restoration. And what was this multifaceted approach? A radical solution. The solution to this desertification issue was designed to encourage the growth of not only trees, but also other forms of vegetation and wildlife. This created a more resilient ecosystem capable of maintaining itself over time. The idea was that by using ecological engineering and integrating farming and livestock practices into the restoration process, the desert could be transformed into a productive, sustainable environment. The importance of integrating various ecological functions became evident in the challenges faced by China's desert reclamation efforts. Traditional methods of reforestation were often short-lived because they did not take into account the full range of ecological factors needed to restore degraded land. Soil fertility, water retention, and biodiversity all played significant roles in maintaining a healthy environment, and this new approach aimed to address these factors in tandem. By integrating agriculture, livestock, and ecological engineering, This solution mimicked the natural processes that had long supported healthy ecosystems. In many ecosystems, plants, animals, and microorganisms work together to create a self-sustaining environment. The desert land would be restored by encouraging the growth of plants, using livestock to manage the land, and applying ecological engineering techniques to improve soil quality and water retention. This holistic approach sought to recreate the natural processes of ecosystem restoration rather than relying solely on human interventions like tree planting. One of the most striking aspects of this plan was the role that livestock would play in the desert reclamation process. In traditional desert restoration projects, animals were often seen as part of the problem. Overgrazing by livestock was frequently blamed for exacerbating desertification. However, this was an entirely different approach. Here, livestock, specifically Rex rabbits, were the heroes. The Chinese also employed ecological engineering techniques to improve soil quality and water retention. This involved the use of water-saving technologies and techniques such as rainwater harvesting, soil moisture retention through mulching, and the application of organic soil amendments. One of the primary obstacles in desert reclamation is water scarcity. In arid regions like northern China, water is often the most limiting factor in the restoration process. Chen's use of ecological engineering to address water retention focused on creating systems that would maximize water use efficiency. Techniques like rainwater harvesting helped capture and store water during the monsoon season, providing a sustainable water source during the dry months. These techniques helped ensure that plants had enough water to survive, even in the harsh conditions of the desert. Soil restoration, a critical aspect of any desert reclamation effort, was another area that benefited from natural engineering. By using techniques that encouraged soil enrichment, such as adding organic matter and implementing soil covering practices, the Chinese aimed to rebuild the soil's fertility and structure. This process allowed plants to grow more effectively, as fertile soil is essential for sustaining long-term vegetation growth and preventing further desertification. This radical solution to desertification represented a groundbreaking shift in how ecological restoration could be approached. The project's initial success proved that the environment is not a series of isolated problems, but a complex web of interdependent systems that require an integrated approach. But why rabbits and not some other kind of livestock? Rex rabbits and the Dalad Banner experiment. The Rex rabbit, originally bred for its distinctive fur, is known for its adaptability and hardiness in harsh environments. Unlike other rabbit breeds, the Rex rabbit has a dense and fine coat that helps regulate its body temperature, allowing it to survive in both cold and hot climates. This characteristic was critical in the choice of the Rex rabbit for the Dalad Banner desert, where extreme temperature fluctuations between day and night are a hallmark of desert ecosystems. The Rex rabbit's ability to endure these temperature changes made it an ideal species for a region that was subject to long dry seasons and intense heat during the day. In addition to its adaptability, the Rex rabbit was chosen for its minimal food needs. This characteristic made it an attractive option for a desert restoration project. In a desert environment where resources are scarce, the Rex rabbit's ability to survive on limited amounts of food was invaluable. It could thrive on native desert vegetation, which is often sparse and low in nutritional content. This trait ensured that the rabbits would not deplete the already fragile ecosystem. Instead, they would play a role in maintaining its delicate balance. Furthermore, the Rex rabbit's rapid reproductive rate was another factor in its selection. The Rex rabbit reaches sexual maturity at a young age, often within 3 to 4 months. Its gestation period is short, and a single female can produce multiple litters per year. This reproductive capacity would allow for a fast-growing population of rabbits, enabling them to have a meaningful impact on the desert ecosystem in a relatively short period of time. In 1999, the ambitious desert reclamation project officially began with the release of 1.2 million Rex rabbits into the Dalad Banner Desert in Inner Mongolia, a region that had been plagued by severe desertification. At the time, many experts were skeptical about the experiment. The idea of releasing such a large number of rabbits into a desert ecosystem seemed unfeasible, and there were concerns about potential negative impacts. Critics feared that the rabbits would become invasive, overgrazing the land and depleting the vegetation necessary for the restoration of the desert. Others questioned whether the rabbits would even survive in such a harsh environment. In addition to these concerns, the project faced a host of logistical challenges. The Dalad Banner Desert is a vast area, and the task of introducing such a large number of rabbits required careful planning. The rabbits had to be acclimated to the desert environment, which involved ensuring they had enough water and food to survive. Special attention was given to how the rabbits would be distributed across the desert landscape to ensure they would not cluster in one area and risk overgrazing it. Despite these challenges, the project moved forward. This approach was unique in that it took into account the entire ecosystem, rather than focusing solely on vegetation or soil. Restoring a desert required a more holistic approach that would involve all aspects of the environment: plants, animals, soil, and water. The Rex rabbits were just one part of a larger, integrated ecological system that would combine livestock, agricultural practices, and ecological engineering to restore the land. As time passed, the skepticism surrounding the project began to fade. The Rex rabbits, far from causing damage to the ecosystem, began to thrive in their new environment. One of the key contributions of the rabbits to the ecosystem was their ability to loosen the soil. As the rabbits foraged for food, they dug into the soil, creating small burrows. These burrows allowed air and water to penetrate the soil more effectively, improving its structure and making it more conducive to plant growth. In addition to improving soil aeration, the rabbits also played a crucial role in improving water retention. The burrows created by the rabbits allowed water to infiltrate the ground more easily, reducing surface runoff and helping to replenish the water table. In an environment where water is scarce, this was a critical factor in promoting the growth of plants and vegetation. The improved water retention helped ensure that the newly planted vegetation would survive, further promoting the restoration of the desert ecosystem. Another significant contribution of the Rex rabbits was their droppings. The rabbits' manure acted as a natural fertilizer, enriching the soil with essential nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. This natural fertilization process helped support the growth of native plants, which in turn attracted other wildlife. The presence of these plants and animals created a more biodiverse ecosystem. Over time, the rabbits' efforts had a transformative effect on the desert. The once barren land began to show signs of life, vegetation began to grow, and green patches started to emerge where there had previously been only sand and dust. The presence of plants helped prevent soil erosion, and as the vegetation grew, it attracted other forms of wildlife, including insects, birds, and small mammals. This marked the beginning of a process of ecological recovery that would continue for years to come. By the mid-2000s, the Dalad Banner Desert was undergoing a remarkable transformation. What had once been a desolate wasteland was slowly becoming a thriving ecosystem. Green patches of vegetation dotted the landscape, and the soil, once dry and lifeless, began to support a variety of plant species. The return of wildlife to the area was another sign of the success of the project. Birds, small mammals, and insects began to inhabit the once barren land, creating a diverse ecosystem. The success of the Dalad Banner project became a model for other desert reclamation efforts around the world. The innovative use of Rex rabbits in ecological restoration demonstrated the potential for using livestock to support desert recovery efforts. It also highlighted the importance of integrating different ecological factors, such as soil health, water retention, and biodiversity into restoration projects. The Dalad Banner experiment was recognized internationally as a groundbreaking success in the field of desert reclamation. In 2009, the United Nations recognized the Dalad Banner Desert as one of the most successful desert restoration projects in the world. It was hailed as an example of how innovative and integrated approaches to ecological restoration could address one of the most pressing environmental challenges of our time. The introduction of Rex rabbits into the Dalad Banner Desert was a bold and unconventional experiment that defied the expectations of many experts. The project demonstrated the remarkable potential of integrating livestock, ecological engineering, and agricultural practices to restore desert ecosystems. Global impact and recognition. The Dalad Banner Desert Reclamation Project, initially an experimental attempt to restore a barren wasteland in Inner Mongolia, has become one of the most celebrated ecological success stories of the 21st century. As desertification continues to threaten vast stretches of land, particularly in arid regions, the Dalad Banner model offers a beacon of hope for large-scale ecological restoration. The project has not only transformed the Dalad Banner Desert, but has also inspired similar initiatives in regions facing similar environmental challenges. The success of the project, with its dramatic transformation of a once barren desert into a thriving biodiverse ecosystem, has garnered widespread international recognition. In particular, the project has attracted the attention of countries in the Middle East, where desertification is a significant environmental and socio-economic concern. Nations such as Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are also interested in using a similar approach for restoring their own deserts. Both countries have faced severe challenges with land degradation and desertification, threatening agriculture, water supply, and local economies. The Dalad Banner Restoration Project has provided an innovative model for addressing these issues. Experts from Saudi Arabia and the UAE have made several visits to Dalad Banner to study the success of the project. These nations, which have vast desert expanses and limited arable land, have been exploring sustainable solutions for their own desert reclamation efforts. Both Saudi Arabia and the UAE face formidable challenges due to their vast desert landscapes. Saudi Arabia alone is about 80% desert, with the Rub al-Khali, or empty quarter, being the largest continuous sand desert in the world, while the UAE's arid environment severely limits arable land and freshwater resources. These factors make sustainable desert reclamation not only an environmental necessity, but also a strategic priority for food security and economic diversification. Saudi Arabian and Emirati experts have focused on understanding the broader principles behind Dalad Banner's success. The importance of integrating livestock and ecological processes, fostering biodiversity, and designing restoration projects that work with natural cycles rather than against them. During their visits, these experts engaged with Chinese ecologists and local managers to examine how this multi-pronged strategy can be adapted to the unique challenges of their own deserts. Saudi Arabia has already launched significant efforts like the Saudi Green Initiative, announced in 2021, which aims to plant 10 billion trees across the kingdom by 2030 and restore 40 million hectares of degraded land. The UAE has similarly committed to large-scale environmental projects, such as the Mohammed bin Zayed Species Conservation Fund and the Abu Dhabi Mangrove Initiative, focusing on biodiversity and ecosystem restoration. However, both countries recognize that tree planting alone is insufficient to halt desertification and climate change impacts, especially given the extreme aridity and limited water availability. By studying Dalad Banner's integrated ecological approach, Saudi and Emirati scientists are exploring how the introduction of soil-enhancing fauna and multi-layered vegetation, combined with water-conserving technologies, can accelerate desert greening. The hope is that these strategies will boost soil health and fertility without relying excessively on irrigation or chemical fertilizers, which are costly and environmentally damaging. China's broader reforestation efforts also offer valuable lessons. Over the past 4 decades, China has implemented some of the world's largest afforestation programs, including the Grain for Green project launched in 1999, which has converted over 32 million hectares of cropland and barren land into forest and grassland. The 3 North Shelter Forest Program, started in 1978 and expected to conclude by 2050, aims to plant a green Great Wall of trees stretching over 4,500 kilometers to act as a windbreak against desert expansion. These programs have collectively increased China's forest coverage from 12% in the 1980s to over 23% today, reducing dust storms and improving local microclimates. Yet, the Dalad Banner project stands out for its innovative use of animal behavior and ecological engineering beyond tree planting, emphasizing restoration of entire ecosystems rather than monoculture plantations. Its success has proven particularly inspiring to desert nations searching for scalable, sustainable methods that align with local environmental realities. As global desertification threatens over 250 million people and degrades 12 million hectares of land annually, the knowledge exchange between China, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE represents a vital collaboration. It marks a hopeful turning point, where traditional knowledge meets innovation, fostering resilience and food security in some of the planet's most inhospitable regions. The Dalad Banner project stands out as an example of ecological restoration that integrates agriculture, livestock, and natural engineering, demonstrating that a holistic approach can not only combat desertification, but can also revitalize the environment, restore biodiversity, and promote sustainability. International scientific communities, particularly in arid regions, have increasingly recognized Dalad Banner as a viable template for other parts of the world grappling with desertification. Scientists have noted that the project's integration of natural systems, like soil improvement, water retention, and wildlife restoration, has proved to be an effective way to turn arid regions into fertile, productive ecosystems. As a result, the Dalad Banner project's success has become a symbol of how nature-based solutions can offer sustainable alternatives to traditional, high-tech approaches to environmental restoration. The Dalad Banner project offers several key lessons that can be applied to other desert regions facing similar ecological challenges. One of the most important takeaways is the value of integrating diverse ecological processes. The combination of livestock, such as Rex rabbits, with ecological engineering techniques, such as soil aeration, water retention, and natural fertilization, has proven effective in restoring desert environments. For countries like Saudi Arabia, where the harsh desert climate poses a significant challenge to agricultural production and land productivity, the Dalad Banner model offers a unique way forward. The use of livestock, like rabbits to loosen soil, enrich it with manure, and improve water retention could be applied in other regions to facilitate the restoration of barren lands. As the Dalad Banner Desert continues to flourish, it serves as a beacon of hope for future generations. The project's success demonstrates that ecological restoration is not only possible, but can also be achieved on a large scale. The Dalad Banner model offers a blueprint for future sustainability, showing that with the right combination of innovative thinking, nature-based solutions, and global cooperation, the world can tackle some of its most pressing environmental challenges. By replicating the Dalad Banner model in other regions facing desertification, we have the opportunity to create a more sustainable and biodiverse future for generations to come. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.